Screen Slurps.
Hello and welcome to Screen Slurps, the movie review podcast where we discuss the good, the bad, and the savage in the world of cinema. I'm Adam Meisner.
And I'm Laura Meisner.
And this week, we're talking all about something very intimate, very deep, very Dr. Phil. Can I say that?
I would not. No, I would not say Dr. Phil. He's crazy.
Maybe very Oprah.
Yeah, maybe a little more Oprah.
Very. What other talk show hosts do we have here?
Well, we got Maury.
I don't know if I want to call us very Maury.
No, no, because
that's the opposite side of the spectrum.
You are the father.
You are the father.
I would say maybe Oprah.
Yeah, that's a good one to land on.
But not. But, you know, of the talk show hosts.
And that's our zone, too. Oprah was
most.
based in Chicago. Her show took place here in Chicago, so.
Woo-hoo.
Yeah, so we're in Chicago. Her show was in Chicago. We're going to land on very Oprah. And I say that because she talked a lot about, well, I mean, a lot about relationships. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And our movie this week is very much so about relationships. Our movie this week that we are talking about is the film that just came out very recently. It's called Past Lives. That's right. The movie this week is Past Lives. If you haven't heard of it, well, I just told you about it. Go check it out. Past Lives. And we're going to talk a lot about the movie Past Lives and why I say go check it out. Maybe you'll listen to me and you'll think, why the hell did he say that? You'll find out all about it right after we talk about our side slurps.
It was like right after these messages.
You know what? We're talking about a television show. It's got to sound like a television show.
We're talking about a movie, silly.
Oprah was a television show.
Okay, I see where you're going. We're all over the place. What are we talking about? Side slurps. I think you should go first this time, Adam. I always go first on side slurps. I'm going to throw it to you.
That's true. And listeners, if you don't know what side slurps are, our side slurps are the things we've done other than watch our film of the week. Maybe they are other television shows. Maybe they're other films. Maybe they are just the random things that Laura and I do with our lives, like, you know, fishing.
We do not fish.
I'm a horrible fisherman, so if that's one of my side slurps. That sounds like the most
boring thing to ever do.
Just fishing in general?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we have some family members and friends that just
you
love
and I are
fishing.
Not fishers.
No, maybe I'd play a video game about fishing. They used to have one on Super Nintendo that was pretty fun.
Okay, sorry, I won't even say that because some listeners might do it and it would be mean. I was going to say, how boring are you that you play VR fishing?
I was just talking about Super Nintendo fishing.
I apologize because I know some people could find that very therapeutic and nice. So I do not say that in a mean way.
I mean, I'm sure there's some people listening right now that are like, Laura
Oh,
Meisner.
I know. Yeah, I do embroidery, so I really can't talk. I cannot talk. I do some of the most boring stuff on the planet, and I enjoy it. So.
Yeah. I mean, hey.
To each their own. Everyone should do what they want to do in life and say, screw everyone else.
I got to say, we've come a long way in this world to even have VR fishing, let alone... I was just talking about Super Nintendo fishing. That was a game that we had back in my childhood, and it was excitement to me and my brother. We're like, wow, getting on that pixelated boat and going around trying to catch a smallmouth bass or something. I didn't know what I was catching. Yeah,
I would play Spyro a lot. But like the first level over and over again because I wasn't very good at anything. Yeah.
These are the problems of our childhood. But anyways, some of the things I did this past week, other than what we're talking about, my side slurps. Well, Laura and I have been watching the television series Banshee. Now, if you haven't heard of the show Banshee, well, Laura and I hadn't heard of it. Yeah. Until I just saw a TikTok recently that was showing a clip from the show Banshee. So Banshee is a very interesting and different television series. A man who was an ex-convict. He was a con man. He was
like a thief.
Yeah, a con man. He was, pretending to be other people and stealing and things like that. Well, he went to prison for a very long time, and then he got released. And it just so happens in episode 1, he ends up turning the tables by becoming the sheriff of a town.
Right.
It doesn't. He doesn't plan this ahead of time necessarily. It just so happens
he's like there when the man is murdered.
Exactly.
And just assumes
the
his
sheriff
identity.
of the town on his first day is in a bar. He happens to be there in that bar at the same time. The sheriff happens to be murdered, and so then lo and behold, that this man is like, well, I'm just gonna be the sheriff now.
I'll just slide on in.
Yep. And then the show continues on from that point, and
It's a wild show.
It just gets crazier and crazier.
Amish are involved. It's like the Amish mafia.
I don't even.
It's created by the man that did True Blood. So if any listeners, if you watch True Blood, get that kind of vibe going, that's what you got with this show.
And it was a show that was created for Cinemax, if that also gives
you an idea of the rating of the show.
The intensity and
nudity.
The kind of rating. Yeah, exactly. Other than that, Laura recently got me into watching I had to start it by saying you were involved, Laura. You got me into watching the TV series Sister Wives.
You're actually going to talk about Sister Wives.
I can't even say how many episodes I've really watched. I mean, it's more like I'm in one room of the house and you're watching it, and then I walk in and see you're in the middle of an episode, and I just wonder to myself, what are these people even thinking being involved in something like this?
I wasn't even...
Speaking of a relationship.
I didn't even have this on my side service, but listeners, I am kind of obsessed with Sister Wives right now.
That is a relationship in itself.
I blame my book club. I blame them because 2 of the girls on my book club watch it. And then, I don't know. It just, again, we've talked about this a million times. Why I like true crime, why we watch these like reality shows. It's just because we're so interested in seeing human beings and like understanding why they do the things they do and how they interact with each other. And there's something about Sister Wives is just so wild to me, that like their relationship dynamics and how it all works out. And it's just like, I can't not watch it.
Human psychology. It just makes me wonder what was going in their minds.
Psychologists.
Yeah, I wonder that, not for myself. I just wonder about these other people. Where did it, or when did it occur to them that they're like, you know what? Yeah, being a 4th wife or a 5th wife in this relationship, that sounds optimal. Like, I just really want to be a part of that. And then you start seeing it in this show. I mean, I still don't completely understand.
I can see the pros to some of it. Not that I'm not saying I want to be it, but the fact that like, if you're an independent person and you like having a relationship but don't want to have to be with that person 24/7, it's a great way to send your husband off to someone else. Be like, go spend the night with your other wife.
I can't imagine that you could just say that though, like, in every situation. What if they come over to you and they're like, yeah, I really want to spend time with you and I look forward to being with you, and then you're just like, no, I'm not feeling it.
Nah, not tonight.
Yeah.
Adam, I meant to tell you, we realized there was a show, I think it was on HBO, that's called Big Love with Bill Paxton, which is about a man who had 3 wives. I feel like it had to have been very much like inspired by Sister Wives or something, but we should also watch that TV show. Side note.
Oh my goodness. Curiosity, I gotta say, it's just fascinating. And really the main other thing I've been up to this past week, I've gotta say, with in conjunction with me talking about video games already, I've been playing the heck out of Diablo 4. It is just taking my time away in a very positive way. I gotta say, I used to play the hours away when I had much more free time with the game Diablo 2. And I loved playing that. Never actually played Diablo 1, I will say that. But Diablo 2 took plenty of my time away. And then when Diablo 3 came out, I played a bit of that. That was fun. But I can't say that I was really hooked on that quite as much as I ever was on Diablo 2. And now with Diablo 4, it's really just a rehashing to me of what Diablo 2 did to me. I mean, Diablo 4 is just really just sinking its teeth into me. And
talk about your player.
Yeah, I've got a few of them. My main character in Diablo 4 is a rogue. I do love playing the rogue character, and I've been trying a few different types of playstyles with my rogue character. But there is one main style that I'm playing with the poison traps and shooting the arrows at people and things like that. But it is a ton of fun. And then I also started leveling up a sorcerer as well, which is also incredibly fun to play. It's got some nice variety to it, but I think at its core, the way that you play the game and the way that the game is introduced to everybody, it is very addicting. And I've gotta, take my hat off and cheers to Blizzard for making the game cross network, so that even if you have the game on your computer or you have the game on PlayStation or even Xbox, I believe, you could play with other people.
Yeah,
so
that's great. I also have been a bit obsessed with Diablo the last few weeks. I have already beat the main storyline. I had Adam's help though, so I mean, I can't take full credit. He helped me beat Lilith in the end. I've been playing as a druid, obviously, no surprise if you know me, focusing on like the werewolf kind of skills. It really is a truly a great game though, in my opinion.
And that's all I've got for my side slurps for this past week.
You're not even going to talk about Summerfest?
I totally forgot to list that out, but if there is something that I could say.
He's so excited about it, he completely forgot about it. It's all right, babe. I had it on my list, so we can combine it together.
I was going to say I could say one thing about Summerfest. There's, the few nights that we went, they were great, but I got to say most recently, the last night that we went was probably just like a climax to it all. And that was us seeing Smokey Robinson live. Yeah. And that was great.
For those of you that don't know, Summerfest is a several weekends long music festival that takes place in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And they have such a wide variety of artists that play, like current artists, past artists, all kind of genres. So we saw, Adam, who all have we seen? We saw Earth, Wind, and Fire, 38 Special, Young Gravy was there. We saw Buck Cherry. And as Adam just said, we rounded it all out with Smokey Robinson, who was amazing. Amazing. Like, I think that show is maybe up there of one of the best ones we've ever seen, Adam. I don't know if it tops Journey. Journey was great, but I'd say Smokey's pretty high up there.
Yeah, just the fact that Smokey Robinson is so, in a very non-offensive way, he's just so old now, and he sounds like he has not aged an age. Yeah. Like, his vocal cords sounds
like his first record.
Pristine. His vocals are incredible, and he sounds just like he put out his first album.
Yeah. I think, too, anything Motown, like, has, like, a special little place in my heart just because I grew up, outside of Detroit. And then one of my first big girl jobs was at, like, an African-American oral history repository where we had a lot of Motown artists who told their life story. Like Smokey Robinson was one of the people that was involved in that project. And he's just so good. So good. Like, I can't say enough things about that concert. But Summerfest was great. That was actually the first thing on my list of side slurps. My second thing was Diablo. So Adam's already covered that, so I won't even go into it. I still play Genshin Impact, if we're going to talk about video games. Still obsessed with that game. They just released this new little fun, like, attraction fairgrounds kind of mini map that I've been playing, and I'm really enjoying that. For my reading, I don't know, I've been in a little bit of a reading slump lately. I'm trying to get back into it. I am, though, rereading From Blood and Ash, so that series by Jennifer Armentrout. I just finished the third one, so looking forward to reading that. I need to read the fourth, and then the fifth actually comes out like next week, I think, or maybe 2 weeks.
Oh, man.
So I got to get on that so I can get caught up. And otherwise, yeah, I think I'm just trying to, like, figure out what I want to do with my free time. I've been getting into some sewing. I got a sewing machine for Christmas, so I finally started doing some of that. I've got my embroidery, finished up some stuff I was doing for my sister's wedding. So yeah, I'm just kind of like in crafty mode. And if we're being honest, I am starting to shift into spooky bitch mode. And Adam thinks it's way too early and he judges me, but I don't care. It makes me happy. So the pumpkins may be coming out soon.
Hey, some of this stuff looks great for Halloween season, and I can't say that I have anything against it.
I love it. If I could be spooky all year long, I would. The weather's perfect.
There's plenty of people that do.
That's true. But, like, the weather's perfect during spooky season. My birthday's in spooky season. Like, everything good happens in the fall.
And there's great movies in spooky season.
Oh, yeah. I cannot wait. We have to this year. I think we should do it like September and October. Like just do like horror / spooky autumn movies. That would make me so happy.
We might have to bust out one of the Disney Channel spooky movies.
Well, yeah. I mean, we can do Practical Magic. I love that movie. Oh,
we'll see.
Adam, so many things we could do. Like we just watched that new Wrong Turn. Oh.
She's getting excited already.
So excited.
With that being said, I think it's time we dive into this week's film, which is Past Lives. That's right, Past Lives, directed by Celine Song, written by Celine Song, and might I say, this was Celine Song's first major release. Just want to put that out there.
Yeah.
It's kind of a big deal.
Yeah. She has been, though, known in like the world. So she's known for her theater productions, though. She did a lot. She wrote some plays, put on some pretty well-known productions. And the fun fact that I have about Celine Song, which Adam, you were asking earlier, and I said, oh, just wait. She, during COVID, during like the lockdown, she did a production of Chekhov's The Seagull recreated on Sims 4.
What?
That was streamed on Twitch. Isn't that so fun? So a play, she like recreated a play in The Sims 4.
Oh, that's very different.
I love that. Like, and it was interesting. She was doing an interview talking about how Sims 4 is a bit theatrical in itself, right? Like you create sets, you create the characters, and then you dictate their lives, like you write the story. It is very theatrical playing The Sims. And I was like, I never thought of it that way, but I totally see it.
It makes me miss the video game, The Movies, because they created that game just so you could create.
Oh, I think you showed me a video of that.
Sim-like films.
Right.
And I thought they were very ahead of their time in creating that game. And I had the game and I was making films in The Movies and things like that. And it was basically just film creation software, essentially, only as a game.
Mm-hmm.
And it was more than just making the movies themselves too. I mean, it was like a Hollywood set, and
like
everything.
the production.
And it's like, you have to set up the production and build the set pieces and things like that. So you had to go through all that sim land.
Well, it's like essentially
kind of
you can do that in The Sims, building.
Right.
And...
But then you would also have to go into the movie creation part of, like what kind of scene do you want to open with, and what kind of filters do you want to use to make the film look the way you want it to. So you'd be able to add like a Western filter, or so it'd have that kind of like orangey kind of, yeah. Or do you want it to have like a black and white tone so it looks more like an old school 30s black and white film or something like that? So I very much appreciated that game when it came out, to be able to make things like that. And I find a game like that is very inspirational for younger kids that would want to become filmmakers.
Well, that sounds exactly like what Celine Song was doing with The Sims. Kind of the same idea.
I really wish that The Sims itself or another game company, if not EA and Maxis that are making The Sims, or another game company, would just like remake the movies or create a brand new game that's like the movies, just expand upon it again and continue to evolve a video game like that.
Maybe that can be your project, Adam.
It'd be great. It'll be fantastic, because I think when kids are that young, not that they can't make their own movies already and just jump into Final Cut or something.
That kind of teaches
but it starts with video games. I mean, like look at ABC Mouse or something like that. Like that's the whole point of software like that, is that like kids don't want to just sit down paper and pencil and do math. They find that boring, or they find that just like this effing blows, The kid's not going to tell you that. But
can you imagine? My child will probably be a potty mouth, so maybe our kid will, Adam.
But the whole point is that like they want to open up a video game to do that. So I digress. It's fantastic to hear that Celine Song did that in The Sims 4. That's an awesome fact.
I just think it's so cool. I didn't watch the actual video yet. I just watched an interview of her talking about it, but maybe we'll throw that on in the background later tonight.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be really cool to see that. Moving forward with the people that worked on Past Lives, the film was produced by David Hinojosa, Christine, I apologize if I don't get these names pronounced correctly, Christine Vacon, Pamela Kofler, Cinematography by... Should I just stop myself? These names are all way too hard to pronounce.
I didn't write them down, so I can't really help you. Oh, Shabir Kirchner.
Edited by Keith Fraze. And music by Christopher Bear and Daniel Rosen. This film was distributed by A24.
Woo-hoo.
Love A24. I just got to say it.
They do no wrong, honestly.
And the release date for this film was January 21st, 2023 at Sundance, the film festival. But the film had its theatrical release, as I said, very recently, June 2nd of this year, 2023.
Wow, that long ago?
It's not that long.
A whole month? You mean July 2nd?
No, June 2nd.
I thought it just came out when we went and saw it, but it's been a whole month.
Yeah.
Huh?
Whoa, what do you know? God. Oh, how about that?
Would you look at that?
And currently,
it sounds like we're on drugs tonight. I swear we're not. We're just happy. We've got Starbucks.
Jeez. Oh.
Stop making fun of me.
And the film is currently box officing around 8.4 million, which is fantastic for a film like this to be doing that. I mean, you can always take a look at films like Avatar or Avatar.
The blue people?
Yeah,
that's Avatar.
Yeah, okay, that's what I meant. So I was thinking, I'm thinking
not
of like
the Airbender.
I'm like, please don't think of the Airbender when I say that.
The Way of Water. Isn't that what the new one's called? I don't know. I refuse to watch it.
But yeah, I mean, when that came out, that movie was breaking the box office with numbers.
Yeah, but not because it was good, just because it was like the spectacle.
I think it's really just the namesake.
Well, yeah, it's James Cameron, and he worked on it forever. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, and just with everybody talking about it, and it's like, well, we all gotta go see it now.
Yeah. But this movie actually is good.
So,
spoiler alert.
With that in our minds, I'd like to start off by just putting the plot out there, just so we get an idea of the synopsis of this film, so we can start some discussion on this. So, basic synopsis of this film: Nora and Hae-sung, two deeply connected childhood friends, are wrest apart after Nora's family immigrates from South Korea. Decades later, they are reunited for one fateful week as they confront destiny, love, and the choices that make a life. All big things to think about in that statement. But it really, with that statement, it's really just it's the moral of everyone's life, really, is it not? Like, it's just something to think about. If I was, I'll put it out there for you, Laura. If you and I were friends when we were children, if I knew you in elementary school, essentially, that's what's happening here. If I knew you when I was younger,
mm-hmm.
and we were just really close when we're younger,
yeah,
that's essentially what's happening in this film. So we've got this childhood bond.
But also it was like childhood love. It was a bit like they were friends, obviously, but they also had this like little schoolyard crush on each other.
Yeah. It was like an unsaid bond, though.
Yeah.
It's just a feeling that they had.
Yeah, they just like fit together. There's certain people in your life that you just like mesh with so well, you know? And I think that's what those two had as kids.
They were friends. They talked to each other when they were younger. You can get that from the movie, that they were always spending time together when they were younger.
Mm-hmm.
But they never admitted that it was more than that.
Right. Well, they were kids. Exactly. How do you know that?
And that's
kids?
The thing.
Like, yeah.
Like, they're not going to start saying when they're 12 years old that they're like, well, I love you.
Yeah.
But I think there is a discussion, I believe, that Nora has with her mom. Like, there's that joking connection before they immigrate out of South Korea that she's saying to her mother in conversation when they're in the living room together, that she's like, oh yeah, me and Hae-sung are gonna be married when we're older.
She's like, oh, I like him.
Yeah. She's like, I like him. Like, we can be married when we're older.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of like a casual conversation she's just having with her mom as a kid. And of course, he's not hearing that at the time.
But then right after that, right, she goes on like a little play date with him, and you see their moms on the side talking to each other. And even Haesung's mom is like, oh, he talks about, her name's Na Young at that point, talks about her a lot. Like, they're cute together. Even the moms are kind of like conspiring.
Yeah.
A little bit there. Until obviously Nora's mom is like, well, we're leaving.
Yeah.
We're immigrating. Yeah, I think this movie, maybe it's easier for us to talk about this movie too, Adam, in this way. I really see it as having like 3 acts, right? You have the first act, which is when they were kids in South Korea. You have the second act where Nora has just immigrated to New York City and they kind of reconnect over Skype. And then you have the third act where they're adults and they actually meet again in real life.
Right.
So kind of, I don't know if that helps us like kind of just talk our way through this movie. But I think something that's really important to point out too, before we really get too far into it, is the opening scene of this movie. Because I think that really sets the stage for what you're kind of expecting to see moving forward, right? Mm-hmm. So the film opens in a bar and you're like, it's like you're sitting at a table with friends having a drink, looking across the bar, and you see these 3 people. You see a white man, and then an Asian woman and an Asian man all sitting together. And you can hear like the people that you're sitting with, or maybe even yourself, right? You as the viewer at that moment asking, like, what's going on here? Like, what's their situation? Are the 2 Asian people together and the white guy is just their friend? Or is he with the Asian woman and the Asian guy's their friend? Like, you're trying to understand what this relationship is. And it's not clear to see what that relationship is. And I think that's, like I said, it kind of sets the stage for what's going to happen in the rest of the movie. You're like, what is the relationship between these 3 people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's a fantastic way to even set the film up for what's to come, because as the movie progresses forward, it does just become layers of depth for these characters' emotions and what's going on inside. And you do get introduced to all 3 of those characters as it progresses, and you do get introduced to that scene. In fact, it's one of the more
it's like one of the scenes. It actually, really a lot of like good dialogue happens in that scene when we get to it again later on.
Yeah, so
but before that, they're kids. They're kids in South Korea.
Yeah, so it starts there, but then immediately after you have that, you see that scene of discussion with that narration from the audience sort of perspective. It gives you a title card of 24 years earlier. Mm-hmm. And we see them as kids.
Right. And that's what we mean, like Adam and I were just talking about. You can tell that they have this like childhood connection and best friends. But we learn that Nora and her family are leaving South Korea, and they're immigrating to the US. Or not the US, they immigrate to Canada, actually. And one thing about this movie is I feel like there's not a lot of dialogue. Right. I think one of the strengths of this movie is its silence in a way, and how it's like nonverbal cues and like subtle body movements speak so much louder in this movie than any dialogue needed to. But when dialogue does happen, it's so poignant. And I think it's just really, really great lines. And one of the really like great lines that I liked happens in this first act between the mothers. So they're sitting there together talking, and Nora's mom is saying to her, like, we're leaving. And Haesung's mom is like, why would you leave? Like, you're an artist. Your husband's a successful filmmaker. Like, why would you leave this? You'll be losing so much. And Nora's mom responds with, it's true that if you leave, you lose things, but you also gain things too. And I think that's something that is so true in life. Like, trying new experiences and moving on or changing how your life is, right? Like, you could lose what you had in the past. Maybe you lose relationships you had in the past, or, I mean, relationships is the biggest thing, right? But think of all that you gain when you step outside of your comfort zone and try new things. And we see that throughout this whole movie, right? Like Nora leaving Korea, Nora leaving Canada, like she loses relationships and connections she had in the past, but look at all that she gains from that. So I really liked that line.
Yeah. And it's interesting to see too throughout this movie the great use of both the English language, because Nora is changing her name. She's moving into these territories where obviously English is the more prominent language in the areas that she's going to, but then also bouncing right back to speaking Korean with her family and with Hae-sung. And it's just this nice back and forth of how she balances that out. And
right, like trying to experience your new culture while not forgetting your past.
Exactly. Yeah. And that goes into an even greater depth as the movie progresses.
I was reading Greta Lee. She plays the character of Nora in this movie. And I was reading an article where when she told her family that she got the part, they were like, do you even speak Korean? Which I thought was funny. And she's like, of course I do.
But yeah, before we see them in their older roles, it's interesting to see, as Laura had mentioned, that there's a great use of silence throughout this movie. I have to agree that I do think that's a great choice for this movie to make, because how often is it in real life or in serious relationships that there's an immense amount of talking? I mean, when we're spending time with people and in these extreme bonds and things like that, I can't say that there's nonstop talking happening.
No, because there's also really poignant, long silences.
Exactly. And it's one of those things that happens early on in this film before the transition into the second part of this movie, where they're probably 24 years old, I think. But when they're younger and they're still about 12 years old, there's a scene where they spend, I believe, like every time they come home from school, they walk home together and take this split in the roads when they're walking back. And so it's about the last time they're walking back together and they're about to take the split. And instead of them having this fine conversation together when they're taking that walk back, they're not having really any conversation with each other, taking that walk back at all. And they go to take the split and they say pretty much nothing to each other. I mean, they're not saying anything when they go to take that split.
Bye.
And then, he just says bye after they stare at each other for about 30 seconds. Then he says bye. Yeah. And then they just walk off.
Yeah. No, and we see that throughout the movie, like I already mentioned. I mean, the silence in this film is deafening in a way. Like it says so much more. And the actors are so good. If we can just talk about them for a second, like the way that they're able to portray their emotions by a slight like nod of their head or a shrug of your shoulders or just a look, even like, that scene, I'm skipping ahead, but the scene when they're on the train together, just quietly standing, like staring at each other. It says so much without saying anything at all. It's just, so good. But so first act, so then we move to the second. And in the second act, like Adam just said, they're probably around 24 or something, like 12 years later. Nora has just immigrated to New York City. So she's left her family in Canada and moved to New York to be a writer, like a film writer, right? Screenplay.
Something like that.
Or other. So she just moved to New York and it kind of opens. She's on a call with her mom. They're just kind of like reminiscing and chit-chatting and talking about people that they knew back in Korea and where they are now. And she's like, oh, I should look up, who's that boy that I had such a crush on? Maybe we should see where he's at. And she looks him up and sees that he actually was looking for her. And so then they reconnect and he's still in Korea, still over there doing his own thing. But they start to have these conversations over Skype and kind of reconnecting with each other.
And then they're talking on Skype all of the time, no matter what the time is, really. I mean, she's making it work for him and he's connecting with her when he can. And so when it's, the right time in Korea, even if it's 7 a.m. for her in New York City, then she's waking up early so that she can be on Skype calls with him.
Yeah, it just seems like they're having hours-long conversations, with each other. Just kind of seeing what the last 12 years of their lives have been.
Yeah.
And I think, too, so I was reading a few articles, and I think when Celine Song was kind of talking about this point of the movie and what these each mean to each other. So I think we can kind of bring in this idea that I think is so poignant throughout this film, and that is like the what if, right? What if things in your life had happened differently? You know, what if she had stayed in Korea? You know, and for her, I think talking to is it Haesung? Is that how you pronounce it? Haesung. Talking to Haesung, it's like her being able to go back to her childhood, right? Like he's Korea to her. She hasn't been in Korea for a decade, 12 years. But when she talks to him, it's instantly like she's back, right? She's back in Korea. That's her connection there. They speak in Korean when they're on the phone with each other. You know, she's like asking him about his life there, yada, yada. And then for him, Nora is like his childhood. You know, he like never forgot about her. So we learned that when he was older and he's in his military service, he's just like always thinking about Nora, thinking, you know, like, what if she had stayed? You know, we had such a close connection and I just lost that and I need her again. And so that's why he finds her and they reconnect. And I think they mean so much to each other, even though they don't know each other anymore. It's like the idea of their past selves that means so much to them. And that's what this movie's all about. I mean, it's called Past Lives, obviously. Like their childhood is in a sense a past life for them. It's something that they left and they don't have that anymore. But by talking to each other, they do have that. And that fits into this whole idea of Inyan, which we can talk about in a bit too. And it's just, yeah, their reconnection to me, it just, like, I get that, you know, reconnecting with people from your past who you just for one reason or another, like totally cut off, and not in a bad way. You just grow apart.
Yeah. And as that continues on, then it finally gets to a point where Nora explains to Haesung that she thinks it would be best if they just cut off having the Skype calls for her best interest and for his best interest, because she moved to New York so that she could pursue what was best for her, for her writing career, and to move herself forward. And she felt that having to constantly stop what she was doing so that she could get onto a Skype call, because now with that in her mind, she is always, you know, dropping everything that she's doing so she can get on these calls. She's looking at flights to Korea, and she's causing him to look at flights for New York City, even though both of them openly admitted that they didn't have time for either one of them to catch a flight.
Well, it's like their relationship was causing them each to not be living their actual lives.
Right.
Like they're living in this virtual life. Yeah. She's always like, when's he going to call me? When's I'm going to talk to him next? Instead of going out and experiencing New York and, you know, living what she wants to live.
And so she was telling him that she thinks it would be best for them to cut off the calls for the time being and they can focus on themselves, which clearly made him very sad.
Well, you know, I mean, I think, as I already said,
I think she was very sad too.
They were both sad. Yeah, I think they both were sad because they meant a lot to each other. But I think this says a lot about their characters and who they are. Nora is a strong woman, and actually, this is I pulled a quote from Celine Song, which I can talk about too. So for Nora, you know, she's not afraid. She is an immigrant, right? Like she's not afraid of leaving something behind to pursue her goals. Like they left Korea and moved to Canada, and then she left Canada to go to New York to be a writer. You know, she's like, I need to change my life to get where I want to be. And so for her too, this was that same idea. Like I need to stop thinking of the past and move forward to get to where I want to be. But I don't think Haesung had that same personality trait. You know, he was very reminiscent and wanting to be back to how they were before.
Yeah. Yeah. I can certainly understand that kind of mindset when he's in Korea and he's wanting to constantly have this nice, you know, mentality of what he once had, and it's there in front of him in this virtual world, but he just couldn't have it, and he couldn't access it in real life. But they call it quits on that for the virtual calls, and it's at that point that we see that Nora is going off to her writer's retreat now, and she's going off to this writer's retreat, and she meets the white man from the beginning of the movie.
A white man.
That's what it is. And his name is Arthur. And she meets Arthur at the writer's retreat. And this is when we learn of the Korean concept of inyon. Very interesting, I thought, when she described the concept of inyon. And we get a very nice section of, in film terminology, B-roll that goes along with the description of inyon. So as Nora explains what inyon is and the meaning of inyon, I thought it was very nice to see how she's explaining what it means, where if you meet someone even briefly, it means you also met in a past life, and lovers are people who have met over and over again in their past lives.
Mm-hmm.
So as she's saying that, she's describing that, but we're also seeing images of Haesung going on his trip to China, like visual images of that, while Nora's explaining what inyoung is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of implied that Haesung is also meeting this woman on a train to China, or he's not on a train actually.
They're
he's,
like eating.
He's going to like a
at
diner
a restaurant,
or like
yeah,
a restaurant,
and they sit next to each other and
Yeah.
they see each other. Yeah, inyan is such a beautiful idea to me. Yeah, that it's like soulmates, right? Like you're meant to be together in multiple lives, and maybe in one life, in early life, you're just friends, right? Like, or you just passed by them in a grocery store and made eye contact. But as you live more and more lives and you keep running into this other soul, this other being, eventually gets to the point then where you are like lovers. And that means that you've been in like 8,000 lives together or something, I think it was. It's just such a beautiful idea.
What an interesting concept. But is that saying that if I meet someone, then we're lovers? Just
No, it's just like you and I, right? Married, we're in love. The idea then is that in our past lives, we've met each other before. Maybe we weren't always lovers. We maybe were friends, or maybe again, we just happened to pass by each other on the street or something. But it's the idea that our souls keep meeting in all these lives that we've lived, and we just keep meeting and keep meeting and keep meeting, and finally then we're together. It's the idea that like souls are just meant to be together.
it'll click in my mind at some point.
It's just a beautiful idea. And I think when they have the discussion later on in the bar, they bring this up again, and I won't skip ahead to there. But they talk a little bit more about it too. And it's just a beautiful concept.
It is an interesting concept. That like perhaps like even meeting someone for the first time that perhaps you met earlier in your life.
Yeah.
There's a connection all around in your life. But yeah, it's interesting. And so she explains this to Arthur. Arthur asks if she believes in the concept of inyon. And of course she says no. That it's just something that Koreans say to seduce each other.
And then she gives him a little eye wiggle.
Yeah. Upon saying that, she's kind of like, hint, hint.
Hint, hint, I'm trying to seduce you, sir.
And
bam, they're married.
Yeah, we learn upon that happening that 12 years later, Arthur and Nora are married. It's we learn that happens, and Nora is a playwright and Arthur is an author. Now, I thought it was interesting that Arthur's book was called like Boner.
I think it was called Boner. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I think it was called Boner. Like, what are you writing about, sir?
Yeah. Yeah. As a Jewish author, he's writing a book called Boner.
You never know.
I'm curious. Very curious. Anyways.
And they seem to have a very happy marriage. I don't want to say something that seems mean. I don't want to be like complacent, but it's like they're together. They're obviously married. They love each other. But it's not this like rollicking head over heels romance like you get in so many rom-coms and like drama films, right? Where it's just like so exagerated and like
it was just visualized as a very real relationship.
Exactly what I was about to say. It just seems like a real relationship, like how actual human beings behave in real life.
Like she goes off and does her thing, and he's at home playing video games, and she comes home. It's like, oh hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
Like,
I think this movie is one of the few times I felt like it was a believable relationship between a couple. Because again, most rom-coms you watch, right, that's always like so over the top, and there's drama and like fighting and making up, and this was just like a normal relationship, and
Right.
it was so great to see that. And I think that plays a big role into the conversation they have later on in the bed with each other. When we get to that, it's just like it felt so real.
Yeah, I agree completely. And they didn't try to blow it out of proportion with what they were doing and what they were talking about. They were just having real conversation, visually making it look real, seem real about all of the things that they had. And I think that's what I enjoyed most about this this build in the end of this film that this was coming up to, because they began to talk about Hae-sung planning a trip to New York and meeting Nora in New York. And what was really most interesting to me is that we would also see these conversations that Hae-sung would have with his friends in Korea. And clearly in these conversations, and this is where it really became a little bit of a not mental confusion, but very much like you're really getting a little bit of the brain jitters. I think
the meat and the potatoes.
And the meat and potatoes, because clearly, as we talked about when they were younger, with Hae-sung and Nora talking through Skype before she was married, they were having this back and forth about, like, I want to see you in New York City from Hae-sung's perspective, and her being like, well, I want to fly to Korea, but I can't. And then he was really let down that they had to stop their calls and all of that. Well, now Nora has met someone else. She's gotten married and time has moved forward. But in Hae-sung's life, he's in Korea. He's talking to his friends and he's still like, well, I want to go see her. I want to go to New York, and I'm gonna go fly and catch her there.
It's like he can't forget her.
Yeah, he can't get rid of that.
And it's so interesting too, because back in New York, Arthur, when he learns that Hae-sung's coming, he's like, well, is he coming to see you? And Nora's like, oh no, I think he's coming on vacation, and it just happens that I'm here. Right. But then we realize, like, no, like, he is coming to see Nora, to see if this is the person that it seems to be even stopping his current relationship, because he says that him and his girlfriend are kind of on a break. They're not getting married. And I think it's because he's waiting to see if Nora is his person, like who he's meant to be with. And so he's like, I need to go to New York just to see her, to meet her actually. And, know if what I'm doing is what I should be, or if I should be with Nora. Like, even though she's married, like, I need to see her.
And as that continues to evolve and become more and more clear, it becomes even more apparent, even in Nora's language, that there is some kind of a little bit of a mental conflict there. And it's not that she doesn't love her husband, but it's clearly like she's got some past life boundaries going on there with her brain, because there's a scene that pops up here where she's explaining what Hae-sung is like to... So
this is after Hae-sung's come to New York, and they spent like a whole day together, him and Nora.
Yeah.
Spent like a whole day together. And then, she goes home to Arthur.
And she's explaining what Hae-sung is like to Arthur. And this just totally puts a mental fog in Arthur's mind, because Nora's explanation of Hae-sung is how Korean he is like. I mean, I couldn't even recreate the
no, but essentially she's like,
quote, like,
he's just very Korean.
Yeah, he's very so Korean and makes her feel less Korean, and she couldn't be as Korean as him, and like.
But I think too, when she's talking with Arthur, like, they do have this connection still, and we saw that on the footage of them spending the day together. Like I said, the slow, just like staring at each other on the train when they're just quiet, but staring into each other's eyes, and
he's got his hand right by hers around each other,
like this cute little first date awkwardness. It's just, so you can tell there's something between them. There's a connection. I'm not saying it's romantic necessarily, at least for Nora, but there's something between them. You can't deny that. Like, you see that. And I think Arthur's kind of getting that from his conversation. And so they have, this is my favorite scene in the movie, hands down. They're laying in bed together and talking about, you know, her day and like meeting Hae-sung. And I think Arthur starts to kind of talk about some of his insecurities maybe in the relationship. He's like, I'm just some boring white dude, you know, and this is like your childhood love, like who's come back to you, you know, maybe he can give you what I can't give you. And maybe he's more exciting than I am. And, you know, one of his lines again that I thought was just so beautifully written, he says to her, you know, like, Nora, you make my world so much bigger. And I'm wondering if I do the same for you. You know, like, I think he's trying to say, like, he loves her so much, but he doesn't know if she loves him back that much. As he, you know, he doesn't feel like maybe he's getting what he's giving. And he's starting to question as to whether she has regrets. You know, does she regret having to leave Korea? Because if she stayed, maybe she would be with Hae-sung. Like, maybe this was her person and they would be married together. And Adam, you and I had this conversation right after we left the theater. And I think this movie is not about regret. It's not about regret at all, but it is about like the idea of like, what if? I mean, your life could be so different if one little thing had changed. You know, we talked about this. Like, what if I didn't move to Chicago? I could be anywhere else in the world and we would have never met and our lives would have been so different. And I don't say that because I want a different life. Like, I love you very much. And I'm so happy that fate has put us where we're meant to be. But it's like, but what if? You know, I'm not looking for something else. But if you like start to think about things, your life could be so different. And you wouldn't know any better because that would have been what your life was. So I think this movie, it's not regret, but it's the idea of like, what if you lived these other lives?
I mean, every little thing makes a difference.
Yeah.
It's like if I woke up tomorrow morning and decided instead of going straight to work, I have a bowl of cereal before I leave.
The butterfly effect.
Yeah. Exactly.
But we should say, you know, Nora reassures Arthur, right? She tells him like, this is where I'm meant to be. You know, I am meant to be here in New York with you. Like, this is where I am. This is where my life has put me and I'm happy. And I'm happy with you. You know, and like, it's just this whole idea that like, you're where you're meant to be, you know, and like, I don't know. I can't even articulate what I'm trying to think right now, but this scene, it's just like, oh, I remember this is the scene I was crying, like where I was crying in, not any other part of this movie. Like, just something about their relationship just really did something to me. And I was like, oh man, so good.
Well, I think it's very interesting moving forward from this because after this scene, Hae-sung does come over to their house, their apartment, and he meets Arthur. Arthur does speak very minimal Korean, but he does understand basic Korean.
He's been learning for Nora and her family.
Yeah, he's trying to speak a little bit of Korean. So they have a very simple conversation to kind of talk to Hae-sung, see if he's hungry, if they want to go out, and they talk about going out and getting pasta for dinner. And we end up back at the bar from the very beginning of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is when it really starts to peak out in terms of them going out to the bar, and Nora becomes like an interpreter as a starting point. So Arthur and Hae-sung try to converse between the three of them, and Hae-sung will say something, Nora will kind of explain it to Arthur, and then she'll try and say what Arthur's saying to Hae-sung, and that goes on for a little while, but it's a little wishy-washy as a conversation.
And eventually it just, Nora and Hae-sung just talking to each other.
Yeah.
And poor Arthur's just kind of sitting there at the bar.
Yep, just having to wait it
pasta.
out.
Yeah. And the thing is, he can probably pick up a few words here and there, but like he's not able to fully understand their conversation. And I can imagine how terrifying that could be for him, right? He just the night before told her, like, I'm worried. And then here they are in this bar having this like intimate conversation with each other, and he can't really tell what they're saying to each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do remember that Hae-sung and Nora were talking about In-young between each other. Hae-sung brought that up to Nora in the conversation with each other, and he was asking what they would have been or what would have happened if she had never left Korea. And when Nora goes to the bathroom, Hae-sung does apologize to Arthur and say that they won't speak alone again.
Yeah. Well, because I think, as you just said in that conversation, he was like, what if you had stayed? We might be married. That's where we could be right now. But on the other hand, maybe we only feel this connection to each other because you did leave and we didn't grow up together and know who each other are. And they're talking about, maybe in a past life we were married, or maybe this is a past life and in the future we're together. And I think Nora in this conversation is I feel like she's trying to push him away in a good way, to tell him like, in this life, we are not meant to be. Like, I am with Arthur. Don't hold back on your life trying to think I'm something. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like she's trying to persuade him in a way to go and live his life and not keep looking back to her. And I think he finally gets that. Like, I think through this conversation they have at the bar, he realizes, in this life, it's just not meant to be. And yeah, then when she leaves, he turns to Arthur and he says, like, I'm sorry, we've been having this like one-sided conversation. It won't happen again.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see Arthur's reaction to all of that. And I feel that, he seemed very sad, but, he went through with it. And this is like the biggest crazy part, though, is just seeing them leave for the Uber and everything. And I feel so bad for Arthur through all of this, because he had to sit through all of that. And then at the very end, she just looks to Arthur and is like, I'm gonna walk him to his Uber. And it's like, okay.
Yeah, well, she wants to say goodbye, kind of, in a way. And I think this scene was so beautifully done. There's no dialogue, again, no talking, and it's just them slowly walking down her New York street to the spot where his Uber is going to pick him up. And it's just this like tension between the two of them. Like, are they going to say something to each other? What's going to happen? How's this going to end?
Oh, well, they're just looking at each other too. And
again,
I'm thinking to myself, like, do they want something to happen? Like, do they want to, connect as they're talking about becoming something with one another? Yeah. Is this going to be the climactic? Like, all right, they're actually going to break the seal and become something with one another.
But no, he just gets in the car and drives away, and she walks back to Arthur. It just breaks down crying. And that's the end of the movie. I mean, so I wanted to talk about this, Adam. This was my question for you, because we briefly talked about this after we saw the film. And I feel like you and I have very different interpretations about the meaning of the end of this movie. And I kind of wanted to like talk about that.
Okay.
So you did you kind of already talked about it, right? Like, what were you thinking about their relationship at the end of this movie?
Well, I mean, I felt like she wanted something to happen with him. And I feel that like he wanted something to happen, but clearly he's just leaving.
So you feel like she was waiting for him to just make a move?
That's what it seemed like. And she wasn't sure what was going to happen, but she was hoping for something to happen.
Mm-hmm. See, and I felt totally different. Like, I didn't get that at all. I very much felt like, no, she loves Arthur. Arthur's who she's meant to be with. And though she has this connection with Hae-sung, to her, I don't feel like it was a romantic connection. I think more so what she was so upset about when he left, like why she was crying, is because it's like she finally broke away from that piece of her life. Like, she no longer has that childhood connection to Korea and the idea of this life that she had in the past. She's like, no, I can't do that anymore. I need to be present in where I am. So the reason that she just breaks down so much is because that final thread has been like severed.
Well, if we think about what they're talking about in the end of the movie, I don't know if I would say that it was severed, but I feel that both of them are in a level of uncertainty about where it's going for both of them, because thinking about the dialogue that they're having, it's kind of stated that Hae-sung is saying that maybe they're experiencing a past life and is asking Nora what their relationship will be in their next life. And Nora is responding that she does not know. And he says the same thing. And then he leaves in the car and she walks back to the apartment and she's crying and falling into Arthur's arms.
Right.
So, I mean, it's kind of like, although she's crying and falling into Arthur's arms, I mean, Arthur's her husband, but I mean, she's crying and she doesn't know what's going to happen later. He doesn't know what's going to happen later. And we're kind of left in this cloud of who knows where the future lies.
I think my thing is, I don't think she was crying because she wanted something to happen with Hae-sung. Hae-sung. I do not think that she wanted something to happen with him. That's where you and I differ, I think, in our interpretations of the movie. Teach their own. That's the point of movies. It's a beautiful movie. Gorgeous. As we already said, I think it's just so realistic in how relationships are portrayed. Not just romantic relationships, but even with your parents. You know, her conversation with her mom, I felt like was just like a real conversation I would have with my mom, honestly. Her and Arthur, her and Hae-sung and Arthur. It's just beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful film. Yeah.
It was a great trip in terms of watching this movie. It's just love the conversations, the way the characters feel, their attempt at understanding one another.
I think too, one of my fun facts. So Celine Song, she like purposefully kept the actors, Greta and Teo, I think his name is, who played Hae-sung. She purposely kept them separated like during filming until they actually met in the movie. So when they filmed that scene where they meet for the first time, it was kind of their actual emotions playing out on the screen, like, because it is the first time that the two of them are kind of meeting as well. And I thought that was interesting. I thought that it makes sense to do that, right? Like that plays into their characters so well.
Yeah. And don't just take our words for it. This movie is being loved by many people. Rotten Tomatoes reviews right now, 98% from critics and a 93% from the audience. And the Roger Ebert score on this movie, 4 stars.
4 out of 4.
Exactly.
Yeah, I definitely. Do you think, Adam? I think it's going to get a nomination for Best Picture.
I think it'll at least get a nomination.
I agree. I think it's going to get nominated for Best Picture, as it should.
And I certainly think the Greta Lee will probably be up for
Best Director.
Actress. Greta Lee.
Oh, Greta Lee for actress. Sorry, I was singing Celine Song for director. Give them all to him. Give them all. Yeah, Greta Lee is great. So Adam and I went and saw this movie at Alamo Drafthouse, which is like a chain of these theaters. And they do something really interesting where before the movie, 30 minutes before the movie starts, instead of just doing like random ads, you know, like you get from normal movie theaters, they have these like specifically curated things that they'll show based on the movie. So, right, like when Adam and I went and saw the Dungeons and Dragons movie there, they had like D&D related trailers and ads and whatnot. And for this one, before it, they had this really cool montage of all these clips of Greta Lee and all of the like cameos of TV shows and movies that she's been in. And you're watching all of these, and I was like, I did not realize she's been in a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I never stopped to think of all the things that
like,
Greta Lee has been a part of.
Quite a few things.
But it's been fantastic to see that Greta Lee's been in so many things.
Yeah, she was amazing in this movie. She deserves a nomination if she gets it.
Slurps Up meaning that we recommend it, we think you should go check it out, and we think that it is worth watching. And Slurps Down meaning that we think that it is a pile of garbage. We do not think you should waste your time, and we think that it is not very good. Laura, Slurps Up or Slurps Down?
I don't even know if we really need to do this at this point, because I think everyone listening kind of knows how we feel about this movie. It's obviously a Slurps Up. Like I said, I think this deserves nomination for Best Picture. Everything we've said throughout this whole episode, right? The acting, the writing, the visual, like cinematography, the aesthetic, everything about this movie was so good. It's just like so patient and a calming movie that just tells so much. It gives you so much with so little, right? It's mostly just like people on screen just looking at each other. But that speaks such volumes. And it just made me think about life, real life, and relationships and the what ifs of life and how things could be different. But, there is those what ifs, but you're where you're meant to be and you're with who you're meant to be with. And, that's kind of the way it is. And just beautiful film. I definitely give it a slurps up.
Life. Yes, that's right. And for me, I also give it a slurps up. I think this movie is definitely worth checking out. And, it just spells out so much about relationships and understanding of relationships and the depth of our brains and just wrapping our minds around what is that other person thinking about, yourself, and what are they thinking about themselves, and the whole idea, which we'll just summarize by thinking about in Jung, which I had never heard of before watching this movie, and I still probably will have no idea what I'm talking about when I look it up again and try to understand the concept of the next time I meet a stranger in my life and I'm like, hey, I knew you from 8,000 past lives before. So with that said, I highly recommend it. Slurps up from me. Go check out Past Lives as soon as you can. That said, that wraps it up for this episode of Screen Slurps. Be sure to follow us on social media at Screen Slurps on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And be sure to listen to us on Spotify, Ghana, or any other podcast streaming service out there. And if you enjoy what you hear, slide on over to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star rating. It will help us a lot. And if there's any crazy movies that you want to hear about, let us know. Leave a comment on one of our social media pages, and trust me when I say we will be sure to talk about it. So closing out, I'm Adam Meisner.
And I'm Laura Meisner.
Slurps up, and we will catch you later.
Later.